Oh hey, as you can see, I am not Brandon Sanderson. I am Patrick Nyland, and this is the road to publishing my first book. Also, I have no idea how Brandon Sanderson signs autographs while he talks to the camera. This is an absolute disaster. I'm just scribbling all over the page. To be fair, my signature is terrible to begin with, but this is not the focus of this video. The focus of this video should be actually writing, because until I actually finish my book, there's no reason for me to sign signatures anyway. On this week's episode of The Road to Publishing My First Book, I'll be challenging myself to write like Brandon Sanderson for an entire week. And it does sound kind of crazy to say I'm challenging myself to write like another author and take on their writing routine for just a week. But when it comes to Brandon Sanderson, it is a challenge. And let me tell you, this is actually the third time I'm filming this video because I've failed multiple times. But no matter what happens this time, I'm going through with it. Even if I fail, that's the video that's going out. But let me just tell you, when it comes to Brandon Sanderson, his writing routine is absolutely insane. It makes sense why he's able to write just so many words a year. It's staggering. And when you see his writing routine, it makes a lot of sense why he's so prolific. Now, I do want to make it clear that I won't be trying to emulate Brandon Sanderson's style when it comes to my writing on this writing vlog. Rather, I'm just going to be trying to do his writing schedule. Instead, throughout this challenge, I'll be writing the third draft of my work in progress, Operation Ark, title in progress, and also later on in the vlog, actually giving you a little preview of what that title is going to look like. Now, for those of you who are regulars for the road to publishing my first book, you're probably surprised that I'm talking about a third draft. Since last I left you off, I was talking about a second draft. I'm going to explain more about what's going on in the project as I actually get to writing in this vlog. But for those of you who don't know the road to publishing my first book, Operation Ark is a series of short stories about humans surviving the nuclear apocalypse on space stations that turn out to be genetic testing facilities. That's actually the smoothest I've ever gotten that out. Obviously, I'm going to be writing my work in progress in my voice. I don't think it would make any sense to write the third draft of Operation Ark in Brandon Sanderson's voice. But to incorporate him more in this vlog, on top of the fact that I am taking on his writing schedule, I also want to spend time between the writing sessions watching his lecture videos online and also reading one of his books. In terms of his lecture videos on YouTube, I've already watched a couple of them and I find them so inspirational and also really helpful as an author who never really went to school to learn how to write. I went to school to get a computer engineering degree and a master's in business administration. And when it comes to writing, I really learned on my own. So being able to watch Brandon Sanderson, one of the best in the business, teach about creative writing is so helpful. And I find it so awesome that he posts the series online on YouTube for everyone to watch. As for the book I'll be reading Mistborn. That's right, I have never read Mistborn. In fact, I've only ever read one Brandon Sanderson book, which is absolutely crazy, especially when it comes to how much I look up to him. The only book I have read is Skyward, and I really enjoyed it, although there were some things I didn't absolutely love. But considering that Mistborn is the book that Brandon Sanderson is most well known for, at least one of them, I am so excited to read it during this week for this vlog, during the times that I'm not writing, especially before bed, because one of the things I'm going to be trying to do on top of writing like Brandon Sanderson in this vlog is I'm going to try to work on reading before bed instead of doom scrolling on my phone. That's been a pretty big problem recently, especially when it comes to my screen time. So I'm really excited to do that as well. And at the end of this vlog, I am going to be talking about my thoughts on Mistborn. So if you want that and you don't care about my writing stuff, feel free to skip to the end. But I definitely recommend you watch the whole thing. I don't know why I told you to skip to the end. But if you do just want to hear my thoughts on Mistborn, that'll be at the end. Now that I've gotten that all the way, let's actually talk about what I'm going to be doing in this vlog in terms of what Brandon Sanderson's writing schedule is. And this is perhaps the most intense writing schedule I have ever seen. And it makes sense, considering it's coming from Brandon Sanderson. The easiest part of this challenge is going to be that it seems that me and Brandon Sanderson have a very similar sleep schedule, in the sense where he likes to sleep in, wake up late, and he likes to stay up really late writing. That's pretty much where the similarities end, though, because Brandon Sanderson spends 8 hours a day writing. It's like a full-time gig. I mean, it makes a lot of sense because he is a full-time author, but still, the amount of time he spends writing is absolutely absurd. Basically, Brandon Sanderson has said he likes to sleep in, wake up late, and then from there, he goes to the gym before having a 4-hour writing session from 12 o'clock to 4 p.m. Yeah, a big part of this challenge early on is going to be building up my writing stamina, because right now, I don't even think I can sit at the computer for 4 hours. I also really like that he likes to get active before his first writing session, because that's something I've also been really working on in some of my previous vlogs, And I've noticed that I'm actually a lot more productive writing when I'm also focusing more on my physical fitness. And that's something I definitely want to continue, and I'm glad that this challenge is really going to help me do that. Now, from 4 to 10, Brandon Sanderson actually likes to set time aside for family and also doing things that he really enjoys to give himself a break. And I think this works really well with my schedule because 4 to 10 is really when everyone in my house is home, and it's also a good time to either watch a hockey game or play some video games. So I really think that's going to work well for me and give me a good break between these writing sessions because I'm definitely going to need it. And then he says from 10 p.m. to 12, and on some nights even 4 a.m., he likes to have a second writing session. Now for this vlog, I'm going to split that down the middle, so I'll be doing from 10 to 2, or at least I'll be trying to do 10 to 2. We'll see what happens when it comes to my procrastination, but that will be the goal, to have 2 writing sessions, one from 12 to 4 p.m. and then a second one from 10 to 2 a.m. Yeah, that's gonna be a lot of writing, and as I've alluded to, I've actually kind of failed this challenge a few times already and kind of restarted because the amount of time I'm going to be writing just seems so daunting, but I'm gonna give this my best shot. And hopefully my goal is honestly to write 25,000 words this week. I'm sure there's plenty of other things I want to say in this intro that I'm just completely blanking on right now, but I'm gonna get started writing because I noticed it is already 1:15, which means I'm already an hour and 15 minutes behind. I'll probably try to make my first writing session a little longer, although we'll see. I have a feeling this first one is gonna be rough, but let's get writing. So it is now day 2 of this writing challenge. Yes, I did just wake up around 11:04 a.m. This is what my hair looks like in the morning. And day 1 actually went surprisingly well. I was actually gonna film my outro yesterday, but I was pretty tired after my writing session, and I lied down to read a chapter of Mistborn. I was gonna read a chapter and then film the outro. I ended up reading a chapter and then falling asleep. But I ended up doing everything I wanted to do, so I am pretty satisfied with that day. Now, when it comes to the time spent writing, I definitely did spend all 8 hours writing. There was definitely a lot of time where I would spend an extra 30 minutes procrastinating before a writing session. And then when I did start writing, there definitely were times where I would slip into procrastinating, looking at YouTube, stuff like that, in between, like, little writing bursts. But overall, I felt like I wrote a lot yesterday, and the word count shows it. I wrote 3,486 words. And right now, my pace is definitely a lot slower as I'm trying to be more intentional with what word choices I use when it comes to my third draft. Like, when it comes to first draft writing, I'm really quick. I can write over 1,000 words per hour, but the quality of those words is definitely questionable. And now at this point of this project, I'm definitely trying to be more intentional with that quality of words. So 3,486 words is exactly what I wanted on day 1. Today, however, I do want to be more intentional when it comes to the time I spent writing. Again, I said between my writing bursts, I was really taking a lot of breaks yesterday. That's simply because I don't really have the energy to write for 4 straight hours. In fact, I think my longest stretch of writing yesterday, where I was just straight focused on the screen, was around an hour and a half. So what I want to kind of do today is I want to be spending all 4 of the hours of each session completely committed to work related to writing. In order to really give myself a break and really help me get through those sessions, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch off between actively writing and then actively beta reading for one of my clients on Fiverr. This way I'm giving myself a mental break from actually writing without spending a half hour watching Iron Man suit-ups, which are so cool. I love the old suit-ups, like before, like the stupid nanotech. Those were so awesome. Speaking of procrastinating, before I get this day started, I actually noticed while I was reading Mistborn last night in bed that I got tired so quickly reading as opposed to when I'm just on my phone. I guess something about the lighting and also, you know, how watching Instagram and TikTok before bed isn't good for you, but I really noticed that difference, and that is definitely a positive, although it means I am going to have to try to read a little more earlier on in the day, because I do want to finish Mistborn by the end of this challenge. For now, though, since I do have like 45 minutes before my first writing session of day 2 starts, I'm actually going to go jump rope to get some exercise in before I actually write. Again, that's another part of this challenge. I want to be more active before my writing sessions, as I think that really helps me, and since I really didn't do anything before yesterday's writing session, I can kind of compare to see if I'm more productive on day 2 after working out, although I know there's some other variables there that aren't consistent, but still, it'll be interesting to see. So I'm now halfway through day 2 of this challenge. I just finished my first session for day 2. My word count is now at 4,710. So I wrote a good 1,200 words so far. A bit slower than I probably would like, especially considering I've been working at this on and off for 4 hours. I won't lie, I have been taking a decent amount of breaks here on day 2. Though I will say the story I've been working on for Operation Ark, this first story, is one that's really given me a hard time for a long time. And my goal was just to get it on the page in a way that I like it. And while I definitely think I'm going to have to go back and edit it, this is the first time where I've written this story and I feel like it's good enough not to delete and start over, which is exactly the goal of Draft 3. Now, as I mentioned earlier on this vlog, I've been pretty quiet about what happens in Draft 2 now that I'm working on Draft 3. I haven't really been covering that phase, and really what happened was I found after Draft 1 there were a couple stories that I really liked, and then other stories I didn't like. So Draft 2, I pretty much only rewrote the stories that I did not like at all from Draft 1, and then looking at them, I still did not like them, so I decided to kind of do a full rewrite of all those stories, and then Draft 3 is just me putting everything together. So I'm rewriting all the stories I didn't like, and then I'm also rewriting the stories from Draft 1 that I thought were okay, but could have been better. And then hopefully after Draft 3, I'm going to have a product that I'm able to at least edit and then send out to my first wave of beta readers to see what they think. I also did spend a little bit of that time from that first session beta reading, and I'm definitely going to have to do some more beta reading tonight because I do have a due date for a client coming up in a few days. By the way, if you're interested in my beta reading services, I'll link my Fiverr in the description below if you want to check that out. All the money I do make beta reading is actually going directly to Operation Ark, whether it be for cover art or different promotions or actually hiring an editor to fix this absolute disaster of a draft. Although it is so far the best draft I have yet in the first story at least, but it's still a disaster and is going to definitely need an editor to fix whatever the hell I've done up to the point where it's an actual legible book. Already on day 2, that time between writing sessions is something I really appreciate about Brandon Sanderson's writing schedule. The writing sessions are brutal, I will not lie. The 4-hour writing sessions are absolutely terrible, but I really appreciate that time in the middle to actually do something else. It feels like a really strong break, almost to the point where I feel ready to start the second writing session when the time comes, as opposed to other writing habits I've tried where you get a little bit of a break, but then you're just right back into it. I really appreciate the long time to really spend with family and also doing other things. Today I'm actually watching the Stanley Cup Finals Game 2 with my parents, and also I'm going to be playing Knights of the Old Republic on my iPad if I can figure out how to get back into the family sharing of apps, because I don't want to buy it again. I've actually really had this plan to do a series on YouTube where I talk about some of my favorite games and the writing of those games. And Knights of the Old Republic is supposed to be the first game I talk about in that series, but I've just been procrastinating playing the game for so long. For one, I just procrastinate everything. That's why this channel is Patrick Procrastinates Writing. But also, Knights of the Old Republic, while I do love the game, which is why I want to make a video on it, it can feel like pulling teeth at times, so I've kind of been putting that playthrough off, but I do want to get that started, and I feel like this time between the writing sessions would be a great time to do that. Upon further thought, it might make more sense to spend some of this time reading Mistborn, since when I was tired last night, I was only able to read 3% of the book, and I have a feeling by tonight I'm going to be similarly as tired, but that's something I will deal with in other days. Today I want to watch hockey and also start playing Knights of the Old Republic for what's probably my 5th playthrough, honestly. So I'm going to enjoy this break, and then I'm going to get right back to writing at 10. Or more likely 11, the game is probably going to go past 10. For my first writing session, actually, I ended up starting at 1 o'clock and pushing it to 5. It took me pretty long to get back into a focus mode after jump roping. It also just took me forever to actually get my jump rope workout done because it was so hot outside, which is why I'm kind of sweating a bit just filming this. I'm trying not to have my fan too high so you can actually hear me. I'm definitely gonna have to get the air conditioner in this week because it's definitely getting hot, which is good. It's been enough of the murky weather. But yeah, so in the cases where I don't start at the exact time, I just push back an hour. So I might do 11 to 3 if the hockey game goes on, but that shouldn't be an issue. As long as I'm actually writing for the 4 hours, I'd rather do that than just try to squeeze in half writing sessions. I feel like that kind of takes away the point of the whole challenge. I'm sure Brandon Sanderson isn't starting exactly at 12 every single day. As long as he gets his 2 sessions in, I'm sure he's satisfied.
Come here, Lookie. I'm gonna stop barking, okay? So you want another belly rub? This is the last one.
So that hockey game ended up going into double overtime, which means it is 1 a.m. and I am just starting my second writing session for the day. I really don't want to skimp on the writing time. I do want to do the full 4 hours, or as much of the full 4 hours as I can. So I'm going to be writing until 5 a.m. We'll see how this goes. I mean, Brandon Sanderson does say on some nights he does go as late as 4 a.m., so really not stretching it that much. I'm going to be so cranky tomorrow. I apologize to everyone in my house in advance. Well, that writing session absolutely sucked. It is now day 3, and to be honest, I am in a bit of a bad mood because my writing session last night did not go well at all. After the first hour, I was getting pretty tired, and even before that, one of the things I really struggled with was I was really struggling to focus for long periods of time to actually put a lot of words on the page. Now, part of that definitely was that I had stayed up to watch the hockey game, but a bigger part of that, I think, is this is one of these stories for Operation Ark that I've also struggled with. The first 2 have been 2 stories that I've really struggled to get the way I want them to appear on the page. And then the third one is kind of one of the stronger stories, so that's going to be something I'm looking forward to in terms of later on in this writing vlog. But first I have to get to the third story, and last night I really barely made a dent in the second story. I think my word count now, it's at exactly 5,147, which means, yeah, I did not get a lot of words done last night. I will say, after I really realized I was struggling to get words on the page, I did shift to beta reading for a good 2 hours, so I did get a lot done in terms of that. But I would have liked to get more writing done first. And then even then, I ended up not doing the full 4-hour session. I ended up going to bed a little early just because once I was getting tired with beta reading, I decided to just go to bed because I didn't want to not give quality work to my client for that. But yeah, definitely was not pleased with how yesterday's writing session went. In general, I feel like I could have done better on both days, so today I'm going to really try and have a bounce-back day. Honestly, I think my goal for today is to write more words than I wrote in the first 2 days, so we'll see how that goes, because I just feel like so far, while I do think there is a lot of merit to this writing routine, and I will say I think it might be better if it was just a little bit less time. I think when I actually decide on what I'm going to incorporate in my writing routine and what I'm going to kind of move on from, I think I'm probably going to try to do something more where there's 2-hour writing sessions as opposed to 4, because so far the 4-hour writing sessions I have not been able to actually sit here for a 4-hour writing session, but I'm going to try to do that better for the remainder of this challenge. Before I do that, though, I do want to get some exercise in because I do want to build that habit of doing exercise before my writing sessions. I know yesterday my writing session did not go so well, but I don't think that's because I did exercise in the morning. For today's video, I'm actually going to be playing some VR boxing. I think VR is a great way to get active and also play video games because I also love playing video games. In fact, I actually have a VR channel with my friends that we're currently working on building up. It is in its infancy, but if you do want to check it out, that's going to be linked in the description. It's called SpatVR with an _. I won't lie, some of the videos are still pretty cringe, the same way that my videos were cringe when I first started this YouTube channel, but I promise you, the same way that my YouTube vlogs did get better as I continue to learn how to make writing content, those videos are just going to get better. So if you're into VR or you just want to see me fool around playing VR games, I highly recommend you check out that channel. I'm not going to lie, I have really high hopes for day 3. I don't think it'd be worse than day 2. I'm so tired, but I won, and that's the important thing. So day 3 actually went surprisingly well. Please excuse the fact that I did not put my clothes away. I kind of forgot about that. But I do want to get to a quick start for day 4. Actually not going to do any working out today. I'm pretty sore, not going to lie. After the boxing yesterday, my back is really feeling a bit tense after all those punches I threw at the air. So I'm going to get right to writing. And on day 3, my word count for all 3 days is now 9,225. So while I didn't quite hit my goal for day 3, which was to outperform what I did in the first 2 days, I came pretty close. I wrote more than 4,000 words by a little bit, and I felt like I was having a better time sitting at my desk for the full 4-hour sessions. I didn't really procrastinate during the sessions yesterday. Now, I did still spend some time beta reading because I felt like it was just too much time. After writing for about an hour, my ideas really start to slow down and my word count starts to like kind of collapse. But I was able to sit down here at my desk for the full time because in the first 2 days I was sitting down for 15 minutes and then pacing around my room for 10 and then sitting down for 15 minutes again. I do have a lot of beta reading to do today on day 4. I do have a deadline coming up. But then after that, for the last 3 days of this challenge, 5, 6, and 7, I'm going to have all my time to really focus on writing. And my goal is going to be to write for those full 4 hours for both sessions. And I'm really excited to see how that goes. Now that I am finished with Story 1 and Story 2 of Operation Ark, I'm really excited to see if my word count speeds up for the next few days. Because Story 3 is one of the stories that I wrote for Draft 1. And then I didn't write it again for Draft 2 because I kind of liked the way it came out. It can be better, which is why I'm rewriting it and not just editing it. But it's a story that I feel more comfortable writing, and as a result, I think I'm going to be able to write it a lot faster. So for day 4, even though I'm going to be spending more time beta reading than I'm spending writing, I'm really curious to see if I can have my highest word count so far in this challenge. In fact, now that I've really built up my writing endurance in the first 3 days of this challenge, I'm really wondering if I can top myself every single day moving forward as that endurance continues to improve. Or maybe at some point I'll kind of hit a wall, because I will admit, this writing challenge, this way that Brandon Sanderson writes, while you can see why he writes so many words, I mean, in just 3 days, I wrote 225 words. That's really more than I've written in a week, in most weeks. However, it's a lot of work, and I can definitely see myself burning out, so we'll see how that goes. So to get myself moving before writing, I went to the park and ended up walking 2 miles around the track. It was a little bit rainy, so ideally I probably should have done a walk yesterday rather than today. But the good news is since it's rainy, that means it's a perfect day to sit down and get some words on the page. I definitely what I need because yesterday did not go as good as I hoped for day 4. My word count after 4 days of Brandon Sanderson's routine is 1,177 words. And while that is a lot of words to write in 4 days, considering I'm spending around 8 hours a day at writing activities, I know a lot of that is being spent beta reading. That still leaves a lot to be desired. It also means I wrote under 2,000 words yesterday, which is really a shame because I actually set myself up really well to have a really big day. Yesterday I wrote from 12 to 2, and that's actually where I got every single one of those words on the page. I had a really productive session, and once I was starting to teeter off at the end, I switched to beta reading, and I was actually able to finish the book I was beta reading for, and then in the second session I wrote my beta reader report in about an hour and a half, 2 hours. That beta read report was actually around 2,000 words, so I guess technically I did write 4,000 words yesterday. But after I finished that report around 12 a.m. or 12, which one is it in the morning? 12 a.m. And then I decided to kind of just lie down for a minute to kind of give myself a break after straining myself looking at the manuscript for so long, writing that beta read report. And they accidentally fell asleep. This is something I do a lot where I plan on having like another writing session and then I lie down for a minute. I promise myself I'm going to get up after that. And I just went out for the night. The other thing that really sucks about that is I also didn't read any more chapters of Mistborn before bed. I'm still only 5% done with that book, and I definitely want to be further along at this point. I guess it's good that I got to sleep because evidently I needed it, and if I spent that time writing, then I probably wouldn't have been putting the best words on the page. And what I will say, even though my word count isn't as high as I hoped it would be so far in this challenge, the quality of the words is exactly what I want, and I'll take 11,000 of these words over some of my other challenges where I write a ton of words, but then I have to just delete them or just rewrite them after because they really aren't worth saving. Still, during the last 3 days of this challenge, I really want to push myself during each writing session, spend as much of those 4 hours actually writing, and now that I'm done beta reading for my client and I have no other clients to work with, I can really commit to spending all 8 hours in each day writing. So I'm really excited to see if maybe I can have a strong ending to this challenge. I'm pretty sure my goal when I first started this challenge was 40,000 words. That's clearly not going to happen, but if I can write 30,000 words, meaning I would have to write basically 20,000 words in the next 3 days, I would be super thrilled with the results of this challenge. Either way, as I've already said, I'm already really proud of the quality of words I've put on the page for Draft 3. I just want some more so I can get further along and really get back on track towards publishing this book. Maybe not by the end of this year. I mean, we'll see based on how editing goes and what my beta readers think once I finally get this draft done. Again, based on how this draft comes out is really going to change my timeline for this book. It can either be the middle of next year or as early as September if it really goes well. So we'll see what happens. Talking about it, though, is going to do absolutely nothing, except maybe build interest in the project, although it's definitely more important that I actually get to writing, so I'm going to go ahead and do that now. One thing I'm really wondering after finishing the first 2 stories in this series and starting the 3rd story is if I need another story between story 1 and story 2. I really like the first story of Operation Ark. It does a really good job of introducing this world and some of its complexities while also introducing some of the themes of the other stories without just spelling it out in your face. That being said, while there is a lot of interest in terms of there is a lot of things being introduced and the theme of the story is very interesting, it's not the most high-paced story. And then the second story I have is also kind of the same thing, where it's kind of a character contemplating their place in the universe in an arc where they really have nothing to do. And I feel like there definitely needs to be a higher paced story between those two. There's nothing wrong with those stories, but there is a big variety when it comes to stories in Operation Ark. While there are some slower stories like these two, there also are a lot of really high-paced stories, a couple of flash fiction stories that are just under 1,000 words, and I'm thinking of maybe adding one of those between those 2 stories, because I don't want the reader to get the wrong idea if they kind of have the first story kind of being it's not a difficult read. It's a very interesting read, at least in my opinion. I hope it's an interesting read. I guess I'll find out more when I have beta readers let me know what they think. But it's just having a slow story after another slow story, I feel like might give the wrong impression. I don't want anyone to put down Operation Ark just because they don't get the faster-paced story they're kind of looking for. Maybe I am overthinking it, but I really think a fast-paced flash fiction story between those first 2 could work really well. Now that I really think of it, though, maybe there isn't that much of an issue, because one of my plans once I finish this draft and I have all the stories written, at the start of each story I want to have a little excerpt about the world of Operation Ark, kind of like when you have like a video game and like there's like an opening screen, and while the game loads there's kind of like a fun excerpt about the world of the video game. I really want to do stuff like that. I really enjoy that in games. I think it can really translate well to Operation Ark and kind of help me give some of the more wacky elements of this world that don't really fit into a story. It's through these excerpts that I'm going to tell the story of how Earth got to the point where it is at the start of Operation Ark. And while there are some dark elements to what happens in that storyline, there also is a lot of wacky, fun stuff that kind of better expresses the vibe that kind of gives a fuller feel to Operation Ark than just the first 2 stories, so perhaps that could work. I don't know if I'm explaining that well at all. I'm definitely going to have my work cut out for me when it comes to actually marketing this book. That's a later problem, though. For now, I probably am going to start brainstorming a story to put between story 1 and story 2, just because now looking at my notes, story 1 is around 5,000 words. Story 2 ended up being around 5,500 words, and then story 3 is expected to be around 10,000 words unless I cut it down. And even if I do, that's 3 beefier stories. The stories in Operation Ark range from 10,000 words to just flash fiction in like 1,000 word format. So I probably am going to want to put a flash fiction story between those 2 to kind of just split it up and give the reader a bit of a break. For now, though, let's see how much of story 3 I can get written today. Yesterday, I only wrote 2 sentences of story 3, and we'll see. Story 3 can move pretty fast. It actually is one of the more fun stories to write. I definitely enjoy writing story 3. Perhaps fun is the wrong word. It is about children killing each other aboard an Ark, so I guess it's not fun, but it's one of the more fun stories to write, at least so far. Yeah, so more fun in terms of there's a lot of dialogue and action, not fun in terms it's kind of funny. While there certainly are stories in Operation Ark that are meant to be primarily funny, Story 3 definitely is not one of them. Although one thing I have been working on in this version of the draft is in all the stories I'm trying to incorporate a bit more of my sense of humor and really add a bit of humor to the writing. And that's something I think I did really well with the first two stories. I'm going to try to bring that along a bit more for Story 3. That's enough talk though, I'm actually going to get writing now. I'm so exhausted right now. Yesterday after my writing session, I made sure that I lied down and read a bit of Mistborn because I wanted to make sure that I was also reading during this challenge. A big part of why I want to do this is because I want to be reading before bed. And typically when I read before bed, I read like a chapter or two and then I get tired and then go to sleep. But Mistborn actually got really good and I ended up reading till like 7 a.m. So considering for this challenge, I'm waking up at 10:30 every day to get myself ready to write at 12. I only got like 3.5 hours of sleep. So far, when it comes to reading Mistborn, I'm enjoying the tone a lot more than I enjoyed the tone of Skyward, the only Brandon Sanderson book that I previously read. I'm really excited for what's coming next with Mistborn, and I'm glad I finally picked it up. As for my writing session yesterday, it did go really well, although my word count does not quite reflect that. My word count is now 13,976 words after 5 days of this challenge. While I did spend the majority of yesterday's writing sessions actually writing, a big portion of that writing time was actually spent brainstorming how people are going to get aboard the Arks, which is something I've kind of ignored in previous drafts. Most of the stories in the book either take place on Earth or already start on an Ark, so I thought it'd be really cool to have Story 3 show what the process of launching into an Ark looks like. The issue was I really did not have a great idea of how that worked myself, so I did a lot of research on both rockets and space stations and how it would make sense for this to all work realistically. I am very pleased with the resulting Ark procedures I came up with, and knowing how people are getting aboard the Arks is definitely going to help me write some of these other stories more concretely in the future. However, as a result of all the brainstorming and all the research, the word count probably left a little bit to be desired, especially considering I basically spent 8 hours working on my book and I got under 3,000 words written. I would like to say I'm confident I'm going to write more today, but considering I only got like 3 hours of sleep, we'll see how that goes. I have about 40 more minutes until today's noon writing session begins, so I'm going to go to the park and jump rope and see if that gives me a bit more energy. I can definitely see that backfiring, but we'll see how that goes.
Must you always bark so loud? Me and my mom.
Alright, so as promised in the beginning of this vlog, here are the initials for the title of Operation Ark. This is actually the third time I've had to film this because I kept on actually saying the actual name when I read the initials, but TKOBG. Let me know what you think that stands for in the comments below. Also, I was gonna blur out the first few paragraphs here, but I've been changing so much with this manuscript, I figure why not leave it up? While I'm currently in love with that first line, I think it'll be really interesting to see just how much it changes before I actually release this book. So my first writing session for day 6 has pretty much gone the same way that almost every single writing session I've had in this challenge has gone, where I wrote a bunch of words that I'm really proud of, but at the end, my word count leaves a lot to be desired. I'm really noticing that after hour 2 in both writing sessions, my brain is basically jumping off a cliff, and even when I take a little break and try to get into it, I'll be able to write a few more words here and edit things to make it look better. I really am not able to put that many more words on the page after I kind of burn out from that second hour. In this writing session, after my ability to put words on the page kind of ran out, and I'm saying ability because I do feel like I still have the motivation to write after those first 2 hours. In fact, during this week, if not anything else, I've been thinking about this project so much more than I normally do, which is insane because I'm constantly thinking about Operation Ark, but I've been thinking about it so much more passionately and coming up with more ideas on how to make it the story that I want to make it. However, I've noticed after those first 2 hours, I just can't consistently put words on the page. It's still Words are still coming out, but it's just at such a slow rate where it just makes more sense to take a break. And I'm not talking about a 15-minute break, I'm talking about a get up and come back to it in the evening break. Now, I was fighting through the last 2 hours of today's writing session because it really does feel like a fight after those first 2 hours. That's how tough it is for me to continue to put words on the page. But in order to try to keep myself in a writing mindset, I actually took the time to watch some clips from Brandon Sanderson's lectures. I know that was something I planned to do in this video, and what really happens quickly is I realized my initial plan was to listen to Brandon Sanderson's lectures while I wrote on my own, and I quickly realized that I can't write well at all when there is anything going on, like any words being spoken. I don't know why I thought I'd be able to comprehend anything he said in his lecture while writing. Maybe it's because in school I would always write during my lectures, but that's because I was just completely tuning out the teacher. I literally can't even listen to my favorite songs while I'm writing. It has to be only instrumental music. But considering I was just staring at the screen and reading what I wrote over and over and over again, I took the time to listen to some of Brandon Sanderson's lectures. And one thing that really took my attention is he was talking about burnout and how you have to really find a writing habit that works for you without pushing yourself too hard, and talking about how to find a life-work balance. And I found it really interesting, and it was actually in this lecture he actually mentioned this writing habit that he's built for himself. And I think at this point it's clear for me why I'm going to complete the challenge. Brandon Sanderson's writing habits do not work for me. The amount of time he spends writing in a week is absolutely daunting, and I'm telling you, if I did this long term, well, I wouldn't do it long term because I would burn out. Sitting here getting ready to start my second session, I am actually dreading writing right now. The same way I actually dreaded this challenge and I pushed it back multiple times, almost putting myself in a writing slump because I did not want to spend 8 hours writing in 2 separate 4-hour sessions. That being said, I think there definitely is something for me in this 2-session approach, and that's definitely something I'm going to be thinking about in these last 2 days, trying to figure out how I can incorporate some of what I do like from this writing challenge without completely burning myself out long term. In this lecture, Brandon Sanderson also really talks about balancing writing with relationships and work lives and how there's often sacrifices. And that's something I've really noticed this week. I really haven't been spending any time with my friends playing virtual reality or other video games because during the time they've been on, I've typically been writing. And that's definitely something I have to incorporate when it comes to picking a writing style that works for me. Obviously, at times, there do have to be sacrifices, but there also needs to be a balance where I am still being there for my friends and my family, for that matter. And then on the topic of writing with a full-time job and how it can be a real challenge to balance that, I'm reminded that I have a huge opportunity right now. While I'm still looking for jobs and I'm currently working part-time on Fiverr, I have a ton of time to devote to my writing. And while not like this, I definitely want to continue to take advantage of that time. Earlier this past year, I really haven't been writing nearly as much as I want to, and that's really putting this time to waste. And I know I can get down sometimes when it comes to not being able to find a job or things like that, but that really motivated me to take advantage of this time, knowing that in the future I'm probably not going to have it. It's going to be only even harder for me to find time to write. It's funny I just said that because the last thing I want to do right now is write, but I'm going to get to it because I know if I don't finish this challenge on day 6, I'm going to make myself do it again. And I really don't want to. Brandon Sanderson just is not human. There's really no other way to explain how he regularly does this. Okay, so today's day 7, the final day of this writing challenge, and I'm going to try to go out with a bang because I've yet to have a bang of a day so far. At the end of yesterday's second writing session, my word count was 16,409, and considering how beat up I felt going into that session, that's really not that surprising. Although, again, as with many other sessions, that session was actually a lot more productive in terms of actually putting work towards this manuscript, even if it doesn't look so in the word count. In yesterday's writing session, I actually found a way to cut down story 3 from about 10,000 words to more around 7,000, which is actually perfect. And also, the way the story is starting now is just so much closer to the action. It gives it so much more life. Initially, in story 3, it really started a little slow, and I was concerned it'd be a little too slow. And now this is a perfect way to give that exposition while also starting in the right place. And that's something I really noticed when it comes to writing short stories. I genuinely believe if I took on this challenge writing a full-length novel, I would actually have a lot more words done, because while writing a novel is more work in terms of putting words on the page, I feel like you're making less decisions at least quickly. When it comes to writing a short story, you're making so many quick decisions when it comes to characters and development, and you're really starting over with every single short story. And as a result, I feel like it's a lot harder to put down a lot of words on the page when it comes to writing a short story. And I'm actually kind of interested in taking on this challenge in the future when I do work on a full-length novel. In fact, after I finish this draft and edit it, because I do think this is going to be the first draft that I actually let beta readers see to get some opinions on what they think is good with Operation Ark and what really needs improvement. So once I'm doing that, I'm actually going to spend that month or so working on Talia's Ghost. So I think it'll be a really good chance to really try this again working on a novel. But for now, let's really focus on day 7. And on day 7, I really want to have a productive day. Another reason why my word count was a bit lower yesterday was I did get a rush hour yesterday on Fiverr. And I figured at that point, since I was already just staring at the screen, adding a word and deleting 2, I would take that on. So now today that I finished that, it was a shorter story that I was working on yesterday. Now I can commit all my time on day 7 to putting as many words on the page as possible to really finish this challenge off in a way where I can feel satisfied. Although, for the record, I've already written 1,600 words plus in this challenge in just 6 days. I have a feeling I'm going to hit 20k today, even though it's not quite what I envisioned at the start of this challenge. I am not complaining by any means, and I am really happy with how the beginning of Operation Ark is looking so far. Now, I already jumped rope this morning, so I'm ready to start writing. I do want to point out, it might seem like if you watch these vlogs, that I am super consistent when it comes to exercising in the morning and being really active. A lot of that is for the camera in the sense that making a vlog does help me stay more consistent when it comes to jumping rope. I really have not been that good at sticking to my fitness goals. In fact, I think we're getting close to the year, it being a year since I actually started this vlog series. And one of my goals when starting this vlog series was actually to lose weight while writing my first draft. And while I did a really good job at writing that first draft, that came really quickly, I think I'm like 2 pounds lighter than I was a year ago. So on one hand, I guess it's a victory that I did not get heavier, but I didn't get any lighter either. So I'm definitely going to want to be more consistent with my fitness goals in the future. If that means either being better at jumping rope consistently when I don't need B-roll footage for a vlog, or if perhaps it just means making more vlogs. I'm done. I'm so relieved to say I've officially completed this challenge to write like Brandon Sanderson for 7 days. And I think it's fair to say that Brandon Sanderson is not human. At the very least, this writing schedule does not work for me at all. Still, I'm really glad I tried it, and there's a lot of takeaways I think I'm going to take away moving forward. But first, I really just need to take some time to relax, because writing for the past few days has really consumed me. I really feel like I haven't been posting as much on social media or doing other things. I've been so focused on my project, which is great in the short term, but I don't think it's sustainable. In total, I wrote 420 words, and if you would have told me that's how much I was going to write in this challenge at the beginning, considering just how much time I was going to spend writing, I would have been pretty disappointed. Though, in actually living this past week, in seeing the quality of words I was able to put out, and really how much I was able to learn about my project in this week, I think it was definitely worth it. And I'm glad I did it, although I likely will not be doing it again, at least in the short term. Eventually, I do want to try doing this when it comes to working on a project that is a single manuscript and not like Operation Ark where there's a bunch of different short stories, because I do think this might be more effective when it comes to focusing on one project where you're not constantly making decisions as you are when you're writing short stories. But for now, I really don't want to think about that. In fact, I'm going to take a second before I actually give my final thoughts. Obviously, today I'm going to write a little bit. I don't want to fall into the trap of a lot of times after I take on a writing challenge, I take a few days off and then it becomes a whole writing drought. So while I'm not going to be writing 8 hours today, I'm probably only going to spend like an hour or two working on the project. I am going to do something just to stay in the routine of writing. It's something I really want to focus on this summer, being more consistent. Because that's been one of my biggest struggles as an author for a long time. But I'm going to work on that for just a little bit. And then I'm also going to focus on reading Mistborn, because with all the writing I had to do this week, I really did not read as much of that as I wanted to. So I'm actually really excited to go read that instead of spending the next 4 hours writing. And then I'm going to give my thoughts on that book, really talk about my final takeaways from these writing habits, and then tie this whole mess of a vlog together. I know This has been a bit more chaotic than my traditional vlogs. Moving forward, I'm working on just speaking more openly to the camera. In my earlier vlogs in this series, while I was learning to be a YouTuber, I was really focusing on just getting every line perfect and really thinking about how to structure my vlogs, almost to the point where it really wasn't a vlog, and that's something I'm trying to change now. So for the next few videos, I might be rambling a little bit more than usual, but then I think I'm going to figure it out, and I think this style is going to work a lot better for really showing the reality of my writing process rather than a scripted line-by-line take of what I'm currently working on. Actually, thinking out loud, I think what would be really cool for the next episode of The Road to Publishing My First Book is if I do a vlog where I actually focus more on how I create content as a writer and my plans for marketing this book once I'm finished writing it. Because although I'm still working on the third draft, I'm already starting to think of how I want to go ahead and market Operation Ark. And marketing is such a huge part of being an author. So I think that'd be cool to kind of bounce some ideas off you guys and really show you what I'm thinking on that front. I'm also getting really close to hitting 100,000 followers on Instagram, so I'm going to start working on a new guide on how to grow your author platform on Instagram. So I think it'd be really cool to talk a little bit more about social media in the next 2 weeks as I really approach that goal. Thank you all for the support, by the way. It really means the world to me, and I honestly don't think I'll be as far along in Operation Ark or even still consistently writing if it was not for that constant support. So I cannot thank you enough for all that. So I finally finished reading Mistborn: The Final Empire, which is great because it's been 2 months since I posted a video on this channel. No joke, I just checked it out. It has been 60 days since my last video, which is absolutely ridiculous. I apologize. That will not happen again. After this video, I'm actually going to go back to my old posting schedule, so I'm going to be posting this on Sunday, as I'm supposed to be posting updates on the road to publishing my first book. And then on Tuesday and Thursday, I'm going to try to hit you with 2 more entries of different videos. And then I'm going to try to get back with the next episode of The Road to Publishing My First Book. Not this Sunday, but next Sunday, because I think this series works better when it's every other week. But for now, let's talk about Mistborn: The Final Empire, because this has been perhaps one of the most enjoyable reading experiences I've had in a really long time. As you know, recently I've been doing a lot of beta reading. While I love beta reading, I think it's taught me so much about writing. It's not the same as actually sitting down and reading a book that is completely polished, and also one written by an author of the caliber of Brandon Sanderson. So this was a great change of pace. I didn't really know what to expect from Mistborn: The Final Empire because, as I've said previously in this video, I didn't fall in love with Skyward. While I thought it was a decent book, it really didn't inspire me to go ahead and read the rest of the series. Mistborn is definitely something I'm going to have to continue reading. I really fell in love with this world. The world building of Brandon Sanderson in this book is so incredible, and I really love the magic system, incorporating metals with the magic, and something that I thought was really creative and something that wasn't too big, but also vast, where there were a lot of possibilities. I was so impressed with this book. Although this book did take me a little while to read, it wasn't because I was reading a little bit every night. While doing the challenge, I really couldn't commit too much time to reading because I was so tired after every night of writing. And then after that, I did have some orders on Fiverr to take care of. But once I actually had the time, I basically read all of Mistborn in 2 nights. It was an incredible read. A bit of a longer book in the sense, well, it's a longer book. It's a 200,000 words, but it really did not feel like that because the world just feels so complete and there's so much action where you're really no points where you're sitting wondering why the book is taking so long. The pacing was incredible, and at all points once I really got into it, which was pretty quickly after I think 10% of the book in, I was hooked, and from there I just remained hooked the entire time. If you have not checked out Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson, what are you waiting for? I know I waited for way too long to read this book. I highly recommend it, and at some point I'm definitely going to continue this series relatively soon. I'm going to have to find time between reading indie books, so I do have to catch up on that series, especially considering it's been 2 months. Probably not going to do a video for both the months I missed, but I do want to get back and do one for July, but I'm going to have to find time because I absolutely love this series, and even though the ending feels so complete, which is something I really appreciate in a book, I feel like these days with series, there's so much focus on building into the next thing, where there's not enough focus in the main story, which is something that's not the case at all in Mistborn, even though there's more mysteries to be explored, and I want to continue following around these characters because I especially fell in love with the way these characters were written. The book still feels completely complete in the sense where I feel like it has a proper beginning, middle, and end. And if the story wasn't continued, although it is continued, and I definitely want to see where it goes next, I would be satisfied with the ending. I'm rambling here. I definitely need to work on talking about books, but I could not recommend Mistborn: The Final Empire more. Seriously, if you have not read it, check it out. Now, to conclude this disaster of a writing vlog that's pretty much 2 months in the making, I want to talk about what I've really learned about my own writing habits since taking on this writing challenge, trying to write like Brandon Sanderson. Brandon Sanderson's writing habits are definitely way too extreme for me. I think it was clear throughout the challenge that I was really struggling to actually use all the time that he uses for writing. But after reflecting, because it has been a few days since I actually filmed the challenge portion of this video, I've kind of learned a bit more about a writing strategy that works for me, and it's kind of based on Brandon Sanderson's 2 large writing sessions style of writing. And what I'm basically be doing in the future, experimenting to see if this can work for me long term, is I really like to start the morning by getting 15 minutes of writing done. I think I've talked about that in previous videos. I find when I do that, I end up thinking more productively in the day. But what I'm going to be doing in the future to see if it works is I'm going to be writing 15 minutes in the morning, then going about my daily routine, trying to get some exercise in. That's something I'm really trying to focus on this summer. And then I'm going to have 2-hour writing sessions. One when I get back from the gym, so like that afternoon session around 12, where Brandon Sanderson had his session. And then a second session in the evening, either whether it be 10 or 12. I don't want to commit to one time in particular, but I want to have 2-hour-ish writing sessions. And when it comes to these writing sessions, I'm definitely going to not force myself, but really sit there and write for the first hour. And if I'm not feeling it after that, I'm going to stop. I found at points in doing this writing habit, while it clearly works for Brandon Sanderson, I mean, look at how long his books are, and after reading this one, I definitely have to check out some of these other long books because I was so impressed. But looking at his writing style, it clearly did not fit for me in the sense he was spending so much time writing, but I really liked those 2 sessions, and I really felt refreshed after the first session going into the second session. But I found I was starting to burn myself out by forcing myself to try to write as long as I could into the 4-hour sessions. So what I'm going to do instead for myself is really only commit to having a potential 2-hour session. But if after the first hour, if I'm feeling tired, I'm going to leave it at that and then come back later for the second session and do the same thing. I don't think looking at my writing habits, I don't think it's healthy for me to keep on pushing myself to the extreme all the time. I think this year has been a big all-round year of just complete writing burnout. But I do want to hold myself accountable to at least have some writing sessions. So that's why I think this hour or so session, one in the morning and one in the evening, can work really well for me. And I think that's something I want to really focus on in a future episode of The Road to Publishing my first book. But for the next episode, since I'm really trying to get back on track when it comes to content and balancing creating writing content and actually writing, my next video is going to be focused on how I try to make my content schedules and trying some new habits in terms of being more efficient with my content strategy. So if that's something you're interested in, definitely stay tuned. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Again, I apologize. It has been way too long since my last video. I promise moving forward, I'm going to be posting a lot more consistently and also trying to provide more high quality content in terms of my vlogs and other writing content. I've been watching back a lot of my old writing videos, and I have a lot of ideas on how I can improve moving forward, and I'm really excited to finally be committing to implementing that in the near future. In the comments below, be sure to let me know what you think about Brandon Sanderson's writing habits. Also, considering now that I've really fallen in love with Mistborn, let me know what other books of his you think I would really enjoy. Moving forward, I definitely do want to try other authors' writing habits. However, to try to get myself back in a groove, because this year has been such a wreck, I am going to try to stick with this 2-hour, 2 writing sessions for a day habit, at least for a little bit. But let me know in the comments what other authors you'd like to see me try their writing habits, because I think it'll be really cool to really implement different parts of different authors' writing strategies as I kind of cultivate my own. I definitely don't think this 2 sessions of 2-hour writing sessions is going to be where my writing habits end up. I definitely think this is going to be something that evolves over perhaps even the years. So if there are any other authors out there that you think have really interesting writing habits, I would love to hear about them in the comments below. As always, I appreciate all your support. I promise it will not be 60 days this time. Likely expect a video in the next 2 days. See you then.